and welcome to the Autocar show. Now, very recently we brought you a comparison with the Swift Desire and the Honda Amaze, and that's really the rage. Those sub 4 meter saloons have really redefined what an entry-level saloon is in the Indian market. Hugely practical though they are restricted in terms of space for people and for luggage. And if you have the average Indian-sized family, then you want both of those. And if you're looking for that, then it's the full-size saloons behind me which you'll want. All four cars veer towards practical more than pretty. Let's begin with the Tata Manza. It has some really nice bits like the smart alloy wheels, the contrast roof and the oversized swept-back headlamps. But in proportion, the tail looks very heavy and the nose stubby. The Verito and the Etios are pretty much like that as well. Despite more plastic and chrome embellishments, it's obvious that they have been designed to optimize space more than win a good looks pageant. They both have very simple designs with lots of flat surfaces. The sail with its split grille, upswept headlamps and rising beltline is the one that lands up looking nicest. The arched roof that flows neatly into the boot makes it look a little better proportioned than the rest. However, the 14-inch wheels look a little too small and the rear overhang pronounced. Well, at 4,413 millimeter, it's really the Manza that is the longest. But the Verito's 1740 mm width and its 2630 wheelbase is what makes it seem like it's the most spacious on the inside. But before I dive into the cars to find out how accurate that information really is and whether it feels like that on the inside, let's take a look at the tech specs on paper of these cars to see what they really offer and how they're priced. And because diesel is still very popular in this segment, it's those power plants that we're comparing. The Chevrolet Sail, not as much power as the Manza, but it definitely matches up on torque. The Toyota Etios is low on power, but it's tuned for efficiency, and it is with the best overall fuel efficiency figure. The Tata Manza, the most expensive and the most powerful. The Mahindra Verito is slowest to the 100 mark, but like the Etios, it's aimed at being practical and fuel efficient. Now, if you look at those figures, there's definitely a lot to think about. For example, the D6 Verito is actually 30,000 cheaper than even the sub 4 meter Swift Desire ZDI. So hugely practical. The Manza, most powerful and feature loaded. The Sail, the newest and hottest looking of the bunch. And the Etios, the most efficient and has recently been updated. So it can get pretty confusing. Well, that's what I'm here for, to clear the clutter. So let's get down to it and find our winner. The Sail, although best on the outside, is severely let down by its interior. Hard plastics, boring colors and down-market seat fabrics with a rather basic design make it quite drab. Also, the ergonomics are not the best, with the power window switches being awkwardly placed in front of the gear lever. The gear lever itself is a little too far back. The small digital tack is too hard to read, and the single DIN audio controls are really not user-friendly. And even the top end doesn't have steering mounted controls. Also, there is no dead pedal, which can be uncomfortable, and no seat height adjust either. The seats themselves, however, are okay on comfort. Still, with all its faults, it's better than the Verito's dash, which despite Mahindra's efforts, feels the most basic in this bunch. The grey dashboard looks dull and the panel above the glove box could have been better. However, the ergonomics are improved and must be mentioned. The power window buttons have been shifted from the central console to the door pads, and the old single DIN music system is replaced by a larger 2-DIN one. The good bit about the Verito dash is that it's lower than the others, making visibility the best even though there is no seat height adjust. We always found the Etios' dash quite simple, but compared to the other two, it's much better on finish and feel. The recent updates in the form of colors and improved switchgear make a big difference. The front seats are also the best of the lot as far as comfort goes. Surprisingly, it's the Manza's interior that's a step above the others. From the moment you pull the upmarket door handles to the 4 leather seats, it all feels more premium. The feel of the black and purple dashboard, the touchscreen audio system, and the interesting dials give it a superior feel. Although one must mention that those dials are a little difficult to read. The seats are large but not as comfortable as they look, and the lack of a dead pedal can become a little tiresome on long journeys. Now you've seen the figures on paper, but sometimes they translate differently out on the road. Let's put these cars there and see how they feel. The Manza definitely feels the most smoothest and most refined of the lot. Not only that, it's also quickest in the flat-out acceleration test. But it's very rare that these cars will be driven flat out, and it's more likely they'll be driven in city, conditions where there's a lot of traffic, and that's where the Manza really falls short. There is considerable turbo lag, and you have to spin it all the way to 2500 RPM to get the boost. With the narrow power band, it keeps you working the gears to get the best out of it, and it becomes a bit cumbersome to drive in daily conditions. Now the Sail also uses the same multi-jet engine from Fiat as the Manza, with one big difference, the fixed geometry turbo. So it makes less power than the Manza, but a bit more torque. Now the Sail does have lag like in the Manza, but it wakes up a whole lot earlier, around the 1800 RPM mark. So it feels more responsive than the Manza, and you require less gear changes as well. Definitely feels better than the Manza in traffic conditions. It isn't much slower in the flat-out slog either, but the engine gets noisy when you rev it, so you have to upshift quicker to keep things smooth. The in-gear times of the Sail show how much more responsive than the Manza it really is. 20 to 80 in third, the Sail is quicker by 1.3 seconds, and 40 to 100 in fourth is actually 1.2 seconds better. When you jump into the Etios after these two cars, you realize Fiat's multi-jet era is coming to an end. Now the Etios' throttle response is far more immediate thanks to the smaller turbo, and there's very little lag before you get into the engine's healthy mid-range. It makes it very drivable in stop-start traffic conditions. The gearbox is slick and easy to use, and the Etios feels very peppy to drive. It's only once you get an open stretch of road or you're out on a highway that you wish for that little bit of extra power. It's a similar feeling in the Verito. Now when you saw the figures, the Verito was the slowest in the outright slog. This is because Mahindra have concentrated on drivability rather than outright performance. Now this is apparent out on the road. The Verito is more responsive than the Etios, especially when the turbo hasn't hit its boost. So park throttle conditions, like traffic, which has deserted me for once, but I'm going to simulate those conditions. So slow down. I'm going to drop down to almost 1000 RPM. I'm in third gear. Gone over a speed breaker. Put my foot down. Still get a move on. So it's very, very drivable, and you don't have to work the gears much. When you soldier on though, you feel the lack of power, and overtaking on a highway at higher speeds isn't the easiest in this one. It will require a rapid change down the gears. So that's the performance. Now like I said earlier, these cars are really not going to be pushed around corners or driven at high speeds, so it will be more the city driving conditions that matter. The Etios, with its light and easy steering, is the one that's easiest to drive in traffic conditions. With its high dash cowl and its tricky throttle response at low speeds, it's the Manza that requires the most effort to drive around, in traffic conditions. The Verito steering feels heavy at parking, but at higher speeds it gives you a good sense of security. With its good body control and composed manner, it feels stable at high speeds. The Sail lets you confidently sail over bad patches, but that's because of its firm suspension, which makes the ride stiff at low speeds. It feels hard on rough road, but as you pick up the pace, it becomes one of the more composed and settled. Now the Verito really outclasses the rest as far as ride quality is concerned. I'm on this rough patch trying to get up to the main road, and you really have to experience it to believe it, how it just flattens everything out. It deals with our Indian roads really well, sharp bumps and all. And even at higher speeds, it's really flat and composed. The Manza rides well too, but it can't match the Verito because the rear suspension is too soft, which results in it bobbing around when you ride over rough surfaces and tossing the rear passengers around a bit. But as far as headroom and legroom go, it's the Manza that has the most space. Now the Verito is the widest, so 3 abreast will have the most space in this backseat. However, if it's seat comfort we're talking about, then the Etios wins hands down. And it does reasonably well on space too. The Sail has a fuel tank under the front seats, which offers a natural footrest to the rear passengers. And space is good too unless you're over 6 feet tall. It's the Manza that insulates the rear passengers the best from all sounds outside, which the Etios doesn't do well at all. The built-to-a-cost feel shows, and it compromises with the insulation. Although it is quieter than before, it still isn't better than the others. The reworked suspension is better than before, but it's still not as well damped as I would have liked. I did show you the overall fuel figures, but if you're going to drive more in the city, you'll want to see how it does there. Thanks to its large 50-litre tank, it's the Verito that can go furthest distance on a tank of fuel. Well, it's a closely fought battle, and let's begin with the Verito. It's great value, it's got space, it's easy to drive, and of course, it's got that brilliant ride quality. But it's let down by its wheezy engine and the totally lackluster interiors. And the Sail can't win for pretty similar reasons too. The interior is unappealing and its quality not too great too. It's got a small boot and it's got a very stiff ride, so that knocks it out of the contention. Now the Manza is a very strong contender. It's got power, it's got refinement, it's very well loaded, the interiors are nice and it's spacious too. But it's really wheelie to drive around in the city, makes it a little uncomfortable in traffic conditions, and it's expensive considering it's a Tata with all the little niggling problems that come up with this car. So that knocks it out. Well, that leaves us with our winner, the Etios. Well, it's spacious, the seats are extremely comfortable, it's easy to drive, and it's got a good-sized boot as well. So it comes with everything that you want in a car in this segment. And of course, there is that Toyota brand, which is extremely reliable, and it makes it an even more sensible choice.